Leadership is not about you. Leadership is about ensuring that those you serve are successful within their roles.
AI will not replace leaders. It will expose them.
The overlap between that and AI and all the things that are going on is this beautiful playground that we have right now to continue our learning so that we can become better.
Then how are you going to lead people through chaos and through challenging time if you are chaotic yourself?
Leadership is not a learned behavior. It is a learning behavior.
AI will not replace leaders. It will expose them. Welcome to the Human Protocol, the podcast about staying human while building your future. I am your host, Mykel Salomon. Today's conversation is not only about AI, it's about something more fundamental. Because in a world that is accelerating, right, where technology is moving faster than ever, the real question is not can you keep up, but it is who you are becoming while you try. My guest today is Dusty Holcomb, former CEO, 5-time Ironman, right? I heard that about you. We probably will ask you a few things about that. And Dusty, welcome to the Human Protocol.
Thank you so much for having me. I love the way you framed that just in the very kickoff is that, AI won't replace leaders, it'll expose them. And I might even say that it will sharpen those leaders who lean into what I believe AI can bring, which is the ability to sharpen thinking, move faster, but only for those who are willing to grow and change and then deploy new skills that they may not have used quite the same way. So thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. And thanks for taking the time to be with us. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, because I know you don't talk about leadership just as a theory. You're also very passionate about talking about leadership as a discipline, right? Discipline, something that we repeat on a daily basis, that we earn it. And for our audience to get to know you a little bit more, Dusty, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And I'll let you go as personal as you wanted to go, okay?
Awesome. Thank you. And I think this idea that leadership is a discipline was rooted for me when I was a very young child. And when I was in the 5th grade, you say go personal. When I was in 5th grade, my parents pulled me out of school and said, hey, we're going to homeschool you. And so all of my primary education was based not on structured process of learning, but it was instead based on basically giving me a free range and a library card and saying, hey, go learn. Go study, do whatever it is you want to do. Mm-hmm. There are some gifts that came from that. There were also some challenges. I didn't have the formal structure of learning mathematics and things like that. But what it did is it ignited within me curiosity, and it allowed me to explore things I was passionate about, which was specifically history and learning about what other people thought and how they thought about the world. And that I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I was just exploring whatever was interesting to me. But my life has been built on this precept of learning and curiosity and how do we get better at what we do and hone a craft. And then I got tucked under the wing of a retired colonel when I was 20 years old, who taught me the most important and valuable thing I've ever learned about leadership, which was this simple idea that leadership is not about you. Leadership is about ensuring that those you serve are successful within their roles. And that when you lean into that and you embrace that as a core first principle, what you really do is enable the organization to succeed because you're putting the success of those in those most important roles before your own. It's not about you, it's about them. And so my entire leadership journey, I've spent 28 years as an executive, 15 of those years as president or CEO. And my entire leadership journey has been around this core first principle belief that leadership is not about me and how do we ensure the success of others. But that means you have to be disciplined. That means you have to be focused. That means you have to be relentless in your pursuit of growth and knowledge. And I'll just leave it with this as a little background on myself. I love this idea of leadership is not you're not born into it. You're not like given fairy dust when you're born to say, hey, you're going to be a leader. Leadership is not a learned behavior. It is a learning behavior. And I think it's an active tense, continuous process of evolution. And I think that is the most important thing that a great leader or someone who aspires to be a great leader can fully embrace. And I think that the overlap between that and AI and all the things that are going on is this beautiful playground that we have right now to continue our learning so that we can become better. So that's a little bit of my background. I didn't go to school. I had to learn, went to school of hard knocks, but I was curious and learned how to think. And that's probably the greatest gift I've ever been given.
Yeah, thanks for going over all that. And I think especially in these new times with AI and where we're heading to the future, this type of mindset is really what's going to set people apart, right? We don't know everything, but as far as we are coming with an open mind, right, embracing that may be a challenge that we see now, it may be an opportunity in the future, then we may be getting ourselves up to great things in the future. But for the sake of this conversation that we're going to have today, and especially in times of leadership, when we first connected, you mentioned something to me that it caught my attention, which is leadership begins with self-leadership, right? And when you mentioned that to me and say, yeah, this is probably what we need to talk about, kids. You don't teach leaders on how to be the best leaders they can be. There are trainings and a lot of things, but for the most part, leaders, they learn on the job, right? And they keep learning. But when you mention and when you talk about self-leadership, what does actually that look like on a good and on a bad day?
Yeah. Oh, I love the way you just framed that. That good and bad day is such a good dichotomy. So this idea of self-leadership is an understanding that in order to create an opportunity to have influence and impact on another person, you must have clarity for yourself of what is important. You must be aligning your behaviors to that sense of purpose or that sense of direction that you've created. And then you have to execute in accordance with your beliefs, those core beliefs. And so the idea is that self-leadership is leading yourself first so that others can be influenced and impacted. And here's what it looks like. When you have taken the time to make the decisions you need about what's important and aligned your behaviors to them, on a good day, it shows up where the things that you say and the things that you do are aligned. And so that reinforces accountability and trust and authenticity because you are showing up in a way that matches your words. So leading yourself is setting that standard and then following it with discipline and process. It doesn't mean that it's easy, but it means that you do the hard thing because you've decided that. On a bad day, you are the classic person who says one thing and does another. And there's that huge disconnect. I'm sure people like this, like they're really good at saying, do as I say, not as I do.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this huge disconnect. And so we as people who are led by people who don't have that internal self-leadership, the discipline of actually being the person that they say they're going to be, when they don't do that, we don't trust them. We don't respect them. We don't follow them. In fact, what we do is we obligingly go along to a minimum standard because we know that they're stuffed shirts. They're not the real person. But that leader who actually behaves in a way that's consistent with the words that they share and are clearly investing in how they lead themselves, man, that's the person you follow. That's the person that you give discretionary effort to because you believe in them. You know that when they say something, they'll do something. And so self-leadership in a very simple manner is articulating what's important, leading yourself to that path, and then executing in a manner that's consistent with that. Good days, they honor that. Bad days, yeah, you fall short. And we all fall short, right? The difference is the person who gets better.
Yeah, and especially when you're leadership, not everything, it's black and white. You're going to have good days and bad days, and you're going to have very bad days where you need to make decisions. And how you're going to lead people through chaos and through challenging time if you are chaotic yourself, right?
Yes, correct. Amen. Amen.
That's why this conversation is so important because it has to start with you. And you cannot be the best leader if you're not the best leader to yourself, right? How are you going to lead others if you're not able to lead yourself in a way that you're disciplined, that you know what needs to get done, that you recognize your shortcuts and also the skills that you bring to the table. So yeah, I like this approach and to make you think about really self-leadership starts with you.
It really does. And this idea that in order to do this, you have to be disciplined about setting aside the time. And it doesn't have to be like you need to go away for a week and sit on a mountain with a journal and drink special spring water. It just means you need to build into your life daily processes of identifying what's important, how you want to show up, and then go doing it. Allowing yourself to navigate the chaos because it's always going to be there.
Yeah, always going to be there. You cannot predict when it's going to come. When the bad times are coming, it just happened out of the blue. And people are going to be looking at you for answers.
Yes.
and that's the part of leadership that sometimes people don't think about. It's not all the shiny and fancy stuff and title and money that comes with it. It's really what happens in behind the scenes. It's a lot of stress, a lot of making the best decisions that you can do for your people, for the company, with the information that you have at hand. And it's not easy to be a leader. It's not.
It is not. And most people aren't taught leadership. They've moved up into roles. They've been successful in their role. And then they're given a role that has a leadership capacity and component to that. And so they have to figure it out. In fact, one of the things that when I work with leaders, and this is from CEOs and senior executives, and as well as leaders who are emerging into their core competency and expertise as leaders, is to remind them that the thing that got them to the place where they were successful is not necessarily the skill set and capability that is needed at that next role, specifically around leadership, right? Because an individual contributor who grows up through the ranks and is promoted, they're promoted based on what they've done, and all the skills, talents, and expertise that they've had that got them the promotion are not necessarily the things that are going to keep them successful in their new role. So they have to work on themselves. And that's the art of self-leadership.
Yeah, it's like when you get promoted into a leadership role, it basically, we're given an opportunity, hoping that you have the basic skills needed to continue to grow and develop what needs to be developed to be a great leader.
Yes.
Right? It's like, I'm giving you 2 cents. I'm giving you an opportunity, hoping that you're going to become that leader. Because no one is ready, right? No one is at the beginning.
No one is. And there's a reason that imposter syndrome is the number one challenge that senior executives and CEOs speak. The amount of times that I've talked to a CEO or an incredibly successful person, and I fall prey to this same mindset myself, is you talk to them and they go, I don't belong in the room. Like I'm not qualified for this. I don't deserve to be here. And it's because the little voice in our head says, I'm not prepared. I'm not good enough. And it's so common. And this idea of self-leadership says, okay, the way to quiet that voice is to do the work on myself so that I feel like I deserve to be in the room. But knowing that if I'm in the right room, I'm always going to be stretching. I'm always going to be a little bit out over my skis. And the most successful leaders that I know, that I have learned from, aren't the ones who feel the need to have all the answers. They're the ones who are comfortable knowing and saying, I don't know the answer to this. What do you guys think? And then when they do that with their teams, man, they are bringing all the folks into the room, and they're making missionaries out of them, not mercenaries doing the minimum viable work. It's magic when it happens, but I'd be remiss if I didn't call out, like, for anyone who's listening, if you feel like you don't deserve to be in the room, or you're challenged, this imposter syndrome, it's the most normal thing in the world. Every person I talk to at a senior executive level, if they're not a raging narcissist, they have that same challenge.
At the end of the day, we're human beings making decisions with human problems, right?
Yes.
And there's no way that you can know what to do in a specific situation if you haven't experienced that. And for the most part, what leaders go through are new experiences and new challenges to them. So what we do, right, and what leaders do, is surround yourself with the best people that you can, that can augment the skills and the knowledge and help you to make those sound decisions that you need to make from time to time based on the data and the situation that you have at the time. But no one will be ever ready 100%, Dusty. It's not going to happen.
It's not possible. Instead of what you doing this place where you feel like you have to be ready for this thing, you're actually preparing yourself to be ready for that type of decision or that environment. I don't know what thing is going to come up tomorrow, but if I have installed the right frameworks and thinking discipline, then I know how I can respond. And so when I think about self-leadership, it's like deciding in advance what's most important and how I'm going to respond to situations is way more important than trying to figure out the answer to a specific situation, because I can never plan for all those things. But if I have my core ideas and philosophies locked in, I know that I can navigate them.
At the end of the day, like with everything, experience matters, right? We're not going to lie about this. Experience really matters. The more you get experience in handling people and situations, even when you don't know the answer and when something is new, you have, like you say, your values and processes locked in on how to handle a specific situation. But this conversation, it's really also important for those young leaders getting started right now, right? And I'm curious to hear from you, Dusty. When you started your leadership journey, right? What did your younger self really misunderstand about leadership that you can share with us?
Okay, I'll be super raw and vulnerable here. When I started my young career, I was so goal-oriented and so task-focused that I was not aware that I was leading people in the process and that I needed to bring them with me. Instead, I was so focused on pointing out where they needed to be and where we needed to go. Frankly, I was a bit of a jack, you know what, because I was so focused on here's the target, here's what we're going to do, go
getting
do it.
Things done and achieving the goals, no matter what.
No matter what. And I had someone on my leadership team, God bless them. They were so wonderful at giving me this. They worked for me, but they gave me the best advice ever. We had finished a weekly staff meeting, and they came to me after the meeting and said, shut the door to my office and said, can we talk? And I said, sure. And they said, I'm 24. So at 23 years old, I was hired to relocate a call center from one city to a very small community, hire everyone. I was the only person that moved. So at 23, I was hiring 350 people, building out this entire operation. I was very blessed to be able to do that, but I was also, like I said, a bit of a jerk. And so this person shuts the door to my office and they said, can I tell you something? I said, sure. And they said, Dusty, you're a jack, you know what? And I went, well, please tell me more, because that was never my intent. I didn't want to be a jerk.
All right.
And they said, you are so focused on getting things done. You have forgotten that the people that are here with you, they want to get these things done too, but they don't want to be numbers in the machine. They want to be part of the operating culture here. And the specific example was I had our staff meetings at Monday morning at 7:30 a.m. At 7:31 a.m., I locked the door. Now, I was so focused on getting the things done. And the locking of the door wasn't the problem. The problem was that at 7:31, I started right into results. And I didn't ask a single person, how was your weekend? What's important? What's going on? And this person gave me that feedback. And when they did that, like my eyes opened that I was leading people. I was leading humans that had lives. And I knew that. I cared. It's not like I was an uncaring jerk. I just didn't think about how much it mattered. And so that was my biggest aha. Again, 24, when someone had the courage to call me out. And that was one of the many gifts I've been given in my career.
Those type of moments are important in part because you allowed that to happen. So it's for leaders listening and watching, it's important to be able to put you in a place that you allow people, your people, the ones reporting to you, to make you see things that you may not be seeing, right? Because sometimes leaders, they just close the door down and they just don't care about what anyone thinks about them. But those feedbacks are the one that makes you also better leaders, because it makes you realize the things that you may be lacking or the things that you may not be doing well. And it helps you should help us to become better leaders that way.
It absolutely should. If I could go back to that 24-year-old self and give myself any advice, it would be, at this point, start practicing a process of reflection to learn. Like I did it, it was organic, but it wasn't intentional. And over the last 25 years or so, I've really focused on learning and curating a skill of intentionality, intentional reflection, intentional learning. And if I could go back and tell that 24-year-old self, start the process of building the journal to learn from the insight, to do the one new thing that you've learned this week about yourself and your leadership. And it took me a number of years later and some other mentors before I started that practice. But I think that's the most intentional process of learning that a leader can deploy. And it applies whether they are leading a team for the very first time or they're the CEO. Mm-hmm. You must curate a practice of intentional reflection so that you can sharpen your own sword and get better at what you do, because our job is to improve our craft. And the only way to do that is to take the time to pause and go, what did I learn? How can I be better? What do I want to do differently? And then deploy those actions into your active processes. And when you do that, you're leading yourself. And when you do that and you do that well, the people that it benefits are those that you lead.
Yeah, and there's no other way of you becoming a better leader if you don't become a better human being. If you don't grow from the inside, right?
Yeah.
People notice. People see our leadership style, the actions that we take, the way we talk, the way we lead. And all that comes from within. All that comes from the work that we put in to become better person and consequently better leaders, right? Because what we do on the personal side, it just transferred to the rest of our life, professional lives, and etc. And it all comes back to the discipline, right? Looking at repeating and going through very disciplined steps on trying to become better person and better human beings.
Yeah, it really is. And it doesn't have to be, we often use this word discipline as punishment. Mm-hmm. And we have to think of discipline as this thing that's a punishing, we have to do it. Well, no, it's the process of choosing what's most important and then just following the process. And it doesn't have to be seen as punishment, but it's like the word criticism. We see this word criticism through this lens of negativity. We see the word discipline through this lens of negativity. And I believe both of those things are actually more of a crucible where we are removing impurities and we're getting a purer, better version of ourselves. So thinking about discipline, thinking about criticism, thinking about feedback, it's the opportunity to remove the impurity that allows you to have a more human connection, a more real alignment with those that you lead and those that you serve. And when you do that and you do that well, it creates this continuous loop of self-improvement and leadership impact. And I've got examples like I've had to do that for myself in my own personal life and how those little things show up. Like you mentioned Ironman at the beginning. Like you don't race an Ironman race because you just wake up one morning and decide, hey, that looks like fun. Let me go do that. Mm-hmm. You do it by getting up and doing the effort sometimes that you don't want to do because you know that when you do it, you'll be ready for this event that you've signed up for. And I think that there's so many ways that we have to reframe the language to, instead of thinking about it through this negative lens, we think about it as an improvement lens, an opportunity to get better. And so the idea of discipline for me, or the idea of criticism, is an opportunity to improve myself for the effect and impact that I can have on others.
And it's looking at discipline as being part of who you are, your identity, right?
Yes.
Then it does not feel like it's a punishment, as you were saying, right? When you start putting in practice and developing action that makes you better, it becomes something part of your identity of who you are. Then it doesn't become or feels like, oh my God, I have to do this, right? That we humans are always pushing back against, oh my God, I have to do this. No, it comes naturally. Yeah.
It does. And I'll give you a recent example. And it was like at the intersection of AI, like where we started off, or AI can sharpen us as leaders. Like many people, I struggle with being caught in the gap. There's a wonderful book by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy called The Gap in the Gain. And because I'm so goal oriented and outcome focused, I can live in the gap. I can be so focused on where I'm going that I forget to turn around and look how far I've come or how much I've accomplished. And as we record this, even yesterday, at the end of the day, I felt like I had spent the entire day running in mud. And I'm sure you've had those days, and your audience, everybody has these days where you look around and you go, what on earth did I accomplish today? Did I get anything done?
Right.
And there's nothing more demoralizing, right? Certainly not for me. And the quick reframe that I was able to do last night when I was just doing a quick journal, and I used I built an AI chief of staff that I record my thoughts into to sharpen myself. It's like, okay, I'm going to do a gain assessment. Here are the 7 or 8 things that I actually accomplished today. And then I started talking about this as I recorded this little transcript. I was like, wow, I actually got a lot done today. I actually improved. And so my little AI chief of staff comes back and says, hey, and it knows this about me. It has this because I've given it my own fallacies. And it's like, wait a minute, this is great. And here's how you lock this in. So it actually helps prompt me, encourage me so that I can have a circuit breaker between a default operating state and what is it that I can do that will show up the best way. Because if I hadn't done that, I probably start this morning frustrated, out of sorts, not ready for the day, thinking about all the stuff I have to do, as opposed to platforming up from what I did accomplish. So a little example of how we can leverage some AI technology to help us sharpen using what I believe are core self-discipline skills.
Yeah, it's definitely a multiplier, right? AI as a tool, as a technology, it's really reshaping our lives. And when you use it wisely, it goes from leaders to individual contributors. I think everybody should be getting on board and start leveraging AI to help us, right? To help us not only to do more with less, but also to be better organized and try to multiply and build more impact as I see it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I like to think of AI. I think we have to lead AI processes and tools the same way we lead people. Mm-hmm. And like we have to think about it the way we lead people. And if we do it right, it makes us better leaders of people because the human is more important than ever. But when I sit down and work with an AI tool or an AI process, I'm thinking about like if I'm managing a team member, I need to make sure that they understand the vision. Where are we going? I need to make sure that we are clearly articulating what great looks like, defining the outcome that we want to achieve, giving clear guidance and instructions and guardrails to operate within. And I think when we think about it, I actually think, I love your word, it's a multiplier. I actually think it can be an exponential tool set for us because we get to practice leadership skills in how we show up with the tool that allows us to actually make those locked in operating paradigms within our own daily work so that we do it better for people. Because I believe firmly that there's 5 core questions that a leader should enable their team to answer when the leader's not in the room. And those questions are really simple. Number 1, why are we here? What's our purpose beyond making money? Question number 2, where are we going? What's our vision? How are we going to get there? What does the culture look like? Question number 3, exactly how are we going to get there? What's our plan? What is we're going to do to make this vision a reality? And then question 4 and 5 are where I find most leaders and specifically many companies really fall off the mark, which is how do I fit in? And so when the person can connect their work to the meaning, the purpose, the vision, and the plan, suddenly what happens is they know why they do these things. They know why it matters. And they don't just do the minimal viable effort. What they do is instead is deploy their own self into the job. They become the cathedral builder versus just the simple stonemason because they can see how it fits. And then the last question, and I think the leaders really have to think about this, is how do we connect the dots so they can understand what's in it for them? Because if we're not doing that, we are by default, it's making it all about the work and not about the person. So I think when we think about those things and those questions as leaders, what ends up happening is we lead ourselves better, we lead our teams better, we can lead with tools better, we get to practice every day with what we do.
Yeah, all those are very valuable insights. And it made me think while you were touching on one of those, it's, well, how do you stop being the one doing everything? And I think that's a challenge, Dusty. I've faced it myself. I'm getting better at it. But it's hard for multiple reasons, especially if you're coming from an IC, spending years as an IC, and being good at what you do, which is getting into a leadership. It's not more about you getting things done. It's more about leading people to get more things done, right? And especially when you are getting started on leadership, I know a lot of young leaders are probably facing this challenge. It's how do you transition, right? into just leaving your old self back, leave it in the back, and then transform yourself into this new leader that needs to get the best out of your team.
Okay, I love this. And let me just say for anyone who's listening that's a young leader or a senior leader, the single most common challenge that I hear when I work with CEOs and senior executives is delegation. Like people not being good at understanding how and when to delegate and how to follow up and all this. Like people take on too much. And the default state is, well, I'm the best at it, I'll do it. And how do you not let that be an anchor to where you've been and get better at getting these things off your plate and making sure the right work gets done? And so the first thing as a framing question that I encourage folks to think through is, as a leader, your job is not to ensure that the work you do the work. Your job is to ensure the right work gets done. And your job is to ensure that everyone understands the outcomes. Why is the work being done? What does great look like? What does success look like? So as a personal practice and that daily discipline process of leading yourself, what I like to look back and recommend, and I did just last week with the CEO. We're walking through his calendar because he was frustrated. And I said, I want you to start a practice at the end of every day, just doing a quick look at your calendar. What one decision, what one action, what one output did you do today that could and should have been done by someone else where they would be better for it? They would be the better person to do the work. They would create a better outcome. Why is this on your plate? Because what happens is we can't solve all these things with like a silver bullet and a magic bell and all of a sudden life is perfect. We have to build on it every day. So looking for one thing every day that you did that could or should be done by someone else where they will do it better because they're closer to the customer, closer to the problem, closer to the opportunity, or it's an opportunity for growth. One of my mentors, when I was griping about delegation a number of years ago, they said, well, Dusty, do you care about your people? Well, he knew it was a trick question. It was a trap for me. I said, of course I do. He goes, why are you stealing the opportunity for them to grow by holding on to things for yourself?
Wow.
Talk about a gut punch.
Wow.
Right?
Yes.
You have to reframe. When you reframe delegation to instead be a lens of, I'm the only person that can do it, poor pitiful me, nobody does it as good as I do. And instead you reframe it through this lens of, why are you stealing the opportunity for someone else to grow and do it better? You suddenly start finding ways to get rid of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a simple practice. I do it once a day. And here's the thing. This is, again, you can use this as an AI process. When you capture that thing, the follow-up question is, so what are you going to do? So this CEO I was working with, we talked through, he said, I could do that. We walked through his calendar and he showed me a couple things. I said, okay, good. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do? Like, it doesn't matter what we talk about. It doesn't matter how good we are at self-discovery and journaling and all that stuff. If we don't turn it into a concrete action step, then it's all just bluster and noise.
Yeah.
So we say, okay, I'm going to take this conversation and I'm going to, instead of owning it, I'm going to deflect, or I'm going to say, I would like for you to handle this. Here's what it looks like. Here's what great looks like. Let me know what questions you have. And so doing that simple process once a day, what one thing could or should have been done by someone else where they would have been given the opportunity to grow. And then what are you going to do? Like, that sets the stage for an action tomorrow. And so like, I might come to you and go, hey, yesterday we were talking and I took this process on. I realized that I'm not the best one to do that. Tomorrow, let's do this. Like, instead, I'm going to let you handle this. I'd love for you to come back to me and show me how I might be missing, because you're better at this than I am.
And I know it's for people listening or watching, it may be something hard to let go at first, but eventually we'll understand that everything we do in leadership, it's really to create capabilities in others, right? If we go into leadership thinking, hey, we are the smartest person in the room, then we are setting up ourselves for failure, because that's really not what leadership is about. right? It's really about creating capabilities, developing others, and making sure that you make the best decisions that you can with information you can and with the people that are surrounding you to make those decisions. And it's hard. I'm not going to lie to you. At the beginning, it's hard to let go. You being that great person achieving and executing tasks. This is a totally different role. This is a totally different profession. It's not about you. It's about the team that you're building and creating those capabilities and enabling people to continue to grow.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And this idea we have to get used to or be comfortable with that it's not about who is right.
Yeah.
It's about making sure we define what is right, what great looks like, and then orienting people towards that. One of the tools that I help leaders walk through, and I'll give this as a gift for your audience, is a process of creating and drafting your own rules of engagement. And where you sit down and you take, it can be done in an hour or less, but you actually write out how you want to show up, like setting kind of your own charter, as it were. And it's very intentional. It's very curated. I actually have my book coming out later this fall on this process. And the first step is like identifying your leadership values, like what's important to you. And depending on your stage, it could be growth, it could be learning, it could be mentoring. It really depends on where you are. The second section of this in the rules of engagement is capturing what you expect of yourself. And the reason I think this is so powerful is when you write down what you expect of yourself and then you share it with another person, you are inviting them to give you feedback when you violate your own rules. Because your rules of engagement are not about how they have to follow your rules. It's for you taking the time to capture and codify for yourself what's important so that you can have others help you follow them. And so this whole process walks you through. Again, it can be done in an hour. And I'll when we wrap up, I'll tell folks how they can get it. But it's this really, whether you share it with anyone or you just do it for yourself, it's this really powerful process of taking the time to get clarity so that you can then show up. It's like once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. It starts to flavor into your language and how you show up. And it's been an absolute game changer for leaders. I've used this process for 20 years. And now I have CEOs who have gone through the process and now make it a standard operating procedure with their company. The whole company leadership team builds their own rules of engagement and they share them. But it's the simple premise. I'm going to write down what's important to me.
That's awesome.
Share it with others.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And we'll be making sure that we share that also when the conversation goes out. And it is important, right? And I think sometimes also, Dusty, some leaders may think that delegation may be seen as something negative. People looking at them, hey, you're delegating, you're being lazy. But people know, our people know, it's when you're delegating because you want to make people grow. And when other leaders are maybe delegating just because they don't want to do anything, that we know. Those cases out there, right? Dusty, I would like to get next to a segment where we're going to discuss what is it going to take to lead humans really in the age of AI, right? Especially with AI being embedded more and more into our daily jobs, daily processes, daily lives, right? So how we as leaders, we can create clarity when we don't have all the answers, right? Because really AI and the future with it, no one knows what's going to happen. We're going to be making decisions as we go. Roles will be evolving. But how can we navigate as leaders the best we can with our people understanding where we're heading towards if maybe we don't have all the answers right now?
Yeah, I love this. Well, we're never going to have all the answers. It's like we're never going to. And the age of AI is a different presentation of information. And 25 years ago, whenever it was, we started the information age, or we had the access to all these things via Google. And you remember how mind-blowing it was when you could open up your Google or Lycos or whatever your browser was and ask any question, you could start getting information. We had to figure out what was important. In the age of AI, I think the real core skill here is to leverage our human capability for logic, for understanding what's really important and what's not. And I think AI can be incredibly overwhelming. Like you can go create this massive 30-page document that no one other than the AI agent is going to ever read. Instead, start thinking about what is the right question to ask? What is the unique human component of what I have, what I know? And you mentioned this earlier. We all have unique experiences. We have gifts that have come to us through our experiences. It's our experience that allows us to ask the right questions and then leverage the AI to help us frame those and ask questions we wouldn't think about and how we do it. So I think the ability to bring our best human selves to it and ask questions and engage with it is incredibly important. The other thing that I think is really important is the idea of what work is done that doesn't create value that can be automated. And how do we then automate the work so that we can deploy the thing that only the human can do? Critical thinking that has knowledge, skills, and capabilities, and an understanding of the emotional quotient that's involved. And I'll give you an example. In preparing for this podcast episode, I have an entire agentic process that gives me the research I need to read a brief. So there's a process that goes out and it builds a preparation brief based on our last conversations. All of that's packaged up for me. Now, I can't have it build my script or my playbook because I have no idea what you're going to ask or how this conversation is going to flow. But what it does is it helps me prepare so that I can be the most human in the moment. But if I went and did all the research or had my assistant go do all the research to prepare, that could take hours of reading and summarizing and trying to figure it out. So leveraging tools to do the things that don't create the value so the human can create the value, so the human can really do the thing. And so I think there's so many examples of that, of ways, especially in today's world, where we can start using the tools to surface patterns that allow us to make different and better decisions, that surface patterns that allow us to ask different and better questions. And I was working with a leader yesterday and he mentioned, hey, I was able to use Claude Cowork to go unlock something that we've been trying and wrestling with for 3 months. It's because the tool could consume a massive amount of information, do pattern recognition and say, this is what's coming up. What do you think? And he could go, holy crap, I've never looked at it that way before. Here's some other questions I can ask. So I think when I think about AI and this intersection, it's leveraging our most human skills, discernment, the ability to leverage our skills, talents, and expertise against a problem, and then use the tool to outsource the non-value added activity or to do the pattern analysis that allows us to make a better decision. That's where my head is right now, but it's evolving so fast that it's amazing to see what happens.
It is. And I love that example that you just provided right now, which is even though when you did not know what are the questions that were going to be asked or how this conversation was going to go through, at least you prepare yourself with information and maybe patterns and you try to connect the dots and the tool allow you to get you that so you could have some base level of understanding of how things could go, right? Based on the pattern recognition and what the tool does that is very good at connecting dots, that's finding information and giving you some examples and clarity on how things may go.
Yeah. And so like my brief was, I had it done a week or two ago, and it said, here's 2 episodes to go listen to. So I could prepare mentally, but then also I could reread the brief this morning and go, here's some patterns to look for. And I think that's the thing that we have to be careful with as we use these tools. It's because we can surface so many patterns. We can create so much complexity in our work, and we forget that we're human and we need to distill to the simple. We need to distill to the essence. And so I constantly have to ask my tools and my processes, what is the one thing? And I love the Gary Keller book, The One Thing. It's like, what is the one thing that by doing would make everything else unnecessary or easier? Okay, what's the one pattern I need to pay attention to? Help me see that. Because we could come up with 20 patterns in a 20-page document and nobody looks at it ever.
Yeah. And that's how things work, right? It's just focus on one thing and then execute and get it done. If you try to come up with multiple things at once, you end up sometimes not doing anything at the end of the day.
Guilty. So I have to watch it, protect myself from myself.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we've all been there, done that type of thing with this. Dusty, I want to ask you one question to get into the final segment of our show, which is one question that I always ask every single guest on the show. Okay. But it's one question, but intended to different groups of human beings. It's 4 or 5. So I'm going to ask you the same question, but it's going to be for 4 or 5 different group of people. So what would be your piece of advice to regular individuals, right? Just going through this period, trying to find what I'm going to do next, especially with AI, getting more and shaping and reshaping our future.
The piece of advice that comes to mind is we often spend all of our time thinking about what we need to do. And I think instead, we need to think about what are the right questions to ask. Like if we can become exceptionally gifted at asking questions that expose information differently, what we unlock is unique answers because we're the only person that might be able to ask that particular question. And I think that's going to apply in this current age, in the next age, or the prior ages. The ability to connect the dots and ask good questions is far more important than being good at a certain skill in the moment. The skill in the moment is the thing that you need to do today. But when you get good at asking questions, you learn how to develop the next skill that's going to be necessary for success.
All right. Your piece of advice to leaders, what do they stop doing right now and what they should start doing immediately?
Stop doing right now is letting the complexity of the day consume every second and reacting to whatever the world is coming at you with. The start doing right now is setting aside a brief 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day to be intentional about what is most important, to reflect on what is the single most important thing that I'm going to accomplish today. And then at the end of the day, how did it go? And what one thing did I do that I should or could delegate to someone else to enable their success? I think if leaders do that and do that one thing of an intentional practice of preparing and closing a day, the compound effect of that is monumental. Every day you're going to get better.
Okay. To companies, what would be your piece of advice to organizations, especially what are they getting wrong about people, us human beings?
This one's easy because it's an area of particular passion for me. I think companies tend to devolve to focusing on the task and the outcome and miss the opportunity to connect the dots between the work that's being done and why it matters. And I would say that if companies could deploy a capability in their leadership cadre to be exceptional at connecting the dots, what they will do is they will unlock a tremendous amount of stored organization in their companies that is buried because people are doing the minimum based at a task level as opposed to understanding why the task matters and how they can make it better. So if I could wave a magic wand and give any company a single skill, it would be to enable the leaders in the company to be exceptional at connecting the dots at every level so that people doing the work can understand why the work matters.
All right. And to people building AI systems, AI solutions, what should they never forget about what human beings means being human?
I think that people should never forget at the end of the day, the human capability and human quotient is to see information that doesn't exist and connect the dots between emotions and meaning and purpose and data so that people and leaders can actually choose the right thing because it's not black and white. And AI can help us surface all amounts of gray and all these patterns and all these things. The human needs to be able to make the decision and know and trust their own instinct when the AI is not right or when the AI is slightly off target.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Dusty. I also think that we need to keep fighting for keeping us humans in the middle of all this conversation and what this type of conversation is looking for to bring in people. So I do appreciate you taking the time to be with us. It has been an extremely insightful conversation about leadership, and probably we will have to have a second round in the future because there's a lot more that we can discuss and go hours and hours. So I appreciate you, my friend.
You're quite welcome. And I feel the same way. I could go for hours with your questions, which are so insightful. If your audience is interested in doing that work on themselves, rules of engagement and crafting that, the gift I would give you is if they go to myrulesofengagement.com, they can download the playbook. And inside that playbook, I give a DISC assessment for a personality profile index assessment that normally when I'm working with clients, it's a $500 assessment. It's a free gift within this because I think it's so important for people to understand how they show up so that they can communicate more effectively. So that's part of the process. And it's my gift to you and your audience.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you. I'm going to make sure as well that whenever I think this conversation is going 2 weeks from now, so I'm going to make sure that the link and all this information is there, so people can take this very important assessment and know a little bit more about themselves, right? Because we always need to know more about who we are.
We do indeed.
Yeah. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dusty, one more time for being with us today. And remember that this conversation is really about becoming better human beings, becoming better leaders, right? And discipline is not about control. It's really about alignment. It's about who we are and who we want to become. And if this conversation sparks something in you, make sure that you share it with your friends, with your family, with your loved one. This is the Human Protocol, because the code may change and will continue to change, but our humanity is the constant. Thank you, everyone, and talk to you next week. Thank you all.